Hello, everyone. I am Olivia Levy. I am a behavioral therapist. I work at an elementary school in Culver City. I am going to get my master's in occupational therapy, so I'm moving across the country in about a month. And yeah, it's a little bit about me.
How are you pandemic-wise, 2020 as a whole? How are you now? And how many times have you been asked that and had to give kind of a BS answer?
Before in 2020, obviously very scared like everyone else in the world. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of knowledge about like the pandemic and just like COVID-19, like what that meant. I actually had COVID last year in December on Christmas and New Year's, so that was great. But I was lucky I didn't really get severe symptoms. I was like pretty asymptomatic for the most part, but just the overall fear of like potentially getting very ill or getting someone else really ill was the biggest concern, I think.
Lives matter. No peace.
When I talk about 2020 to like my future children, I'm definitely going to talk about like coronavirus, but I'm also going to talk about like what happened in the Capitol in the beginning of 2021, and then what happened with George Floyd. And I think we were get so desensitized to seeing Black men getting brutally beaten and, you know, killed by police, that to me I was like, damn, this is really fucked up. But I didn't see the full extent of the video, but I remember going home and watching it on like my computer, and I was like, wait, what is going on here? And that was the first time that I had seen that like blatantly. I know that like there have been instances where like police have like shot and killed, and I'm thinking, okay, like that's horrible, like obviously, but I was like, okay, there's no like videos that I had seen on it, and I was thinking like, okay, instant death, you know, like if anything, this was a slow, painful, horrific like way to go out, like, and just for him, oh, sorry, just for him to like call out for his mom, it's like a lot. Sorry.
Okay.
That really got to me too, just thinking about my own mom, you know. It's just a lot. I just thought like, fuck, this is not right. So that's why I was like, I need to protest. Like even just talking to you about it now, like a year later, and getting like that conviction finally was like, it didn't even feel like justice. It just felt like that's what should have happened.
A year ago.
There's no justice here. This is just what should have happened, you know? So
Right.
yeah, I would tell my kids that. I could not fathom staying home like in that kind of instance. Doesn't matter if I was in a global pandemic or not, it did not scare me to go out. Like every protest that I had gone to was, first of all, it's outdoors, everyone wore a mask, there's people on the sidelines even giving out like water, snacks, like sunscreen, first aid, like people who weren't even protesting. Like it was a very much like a community feeling, and it made me really happy to be a part of that. We are going to just keep protesting, and there's protests right now, like in LA, there's the injustices, like, and how we need to help Palestine and how to donate, and they're out there like right now. So I think like we didn't really see that so much before, and then now since like, you know, BLM was the catalyst for all of that, which is awesome. If I see something that is unjust, I think just my own personality too, and like just in my own profession as well, like I will always stand up. Like that's just for me. Like I will always say something. So whether that's going and joining a community of protesters, or just like posting something on social media that I think is important for me to talk about and to get like my point across, or even to just have conversations with, you know, different generations, smaller kids that I work with, older people that I work with, or just like friends with, whatever.
I just find it interesting that at the Women's March, there were no police there was no rubber bullets, there was no tear gas being sprayed, and there was no curfew in place. So it says a lot.
I never felt pressure ever to post something like that on my story or social media. Never felt the pressure. I think that because we are able to see these things like on Instagram or Twitter or whatever your platform is, and you get that little like whatever little snippet of information, that 1 minute reel or that TikTok or whatever it may be, that's just quick info. And if you agree with something and you repost it, like I don't see anything wrong with that. However, I think the people who I saw posting about like BLM and like George Floyd, I felt like they were more feeling pressure to do so because they were never posting stuff like that before. Like for me, I feel like even like I was saying, like in 2017, when this was not talked about, like I was going to things like that. And I had posted like some stuff like that. I was like, yes, like, you know, an art piece that I was like, yes, like I love this. And I posted it. No one else went to that event. I didn't feel like pressure. It was just like something that I believed in. You know, there are people out there who just feel like, oh, this is the trend, you know, and it's not. It's cool to be posting about this stuff, or oh, let me like just post a black square, but like I haven't like done any research or posted anything else. It's like that is clearly like not right, you know.
I know that the protesters are being peaceful. I know that in my heart. I've peacefully protested many times before, and I just feel like, you know, the police are definitely the ones that are initiating this violence and acts of terrorism almost. The only problem that I have with all of this is that there is looting going on and people are taking advantage of the situation. And something that happened to my best friend today should not have happened because someone was just trying to take advantage.
I try not to get emotional right now. The first thing that comes to my mind was just my best friend getting hit over the head during the riots. So Will was at his job and he's working at the pawn shop. I was texting him saying like, I need to protest. This is getting outrageous. Like, you know, and he, so like where he used to work is right, I want to say like near Beverly Hills, but like on the way towards Hollywood. It's like mid-city, you know, so it's the middle of everything. I guess the shop was, you know, a lot of pawn shops got raided and a lot of people looted and took a lot of things. Obviously, there's a lot of valuables in a pawn shop. And as he's texting me, he's like, I can't go with you. And he was my best friend at the time. I was like, dude, like, you have to go with me. Like, are you joking? And we were arguing and we got into like a major fight and we never really fought before that. I've known him for like 8 years because I was outraged. I was like, how can you not like want to protest with me? Like, F you. At that moment, he was boarding up the shop because people were like trying to come in and had guns and stuff. So he's like boarding up the shop. Other places are getting looted and like, you know, all the riots are going on. And 6 guys like just pull up and they had a gun and they just were like open the door. And in pawn shops, like you have to ring the bell. You don't really have a key unless you're the manager. Like he's not the manager, so he couldn't open the door. You know, he's like, oh, I don't have the key kind of thing. And they were like, give us everything that you have. And they just like pistol whipped him. He started bleeding out like crazy in the back of his head. He ended up having to get like luckily he didn't get stitches, but he got like staples in his head. They robbed him. They took everything he had. And they hit him pretty hard. He called the police. Police never came, waited like 30 minutes. Mind you, he's like bleeding out. Paramedics never came because there was a shortage. It was like a purge. Like there was no emergency services available. So his boss ends up driving him to his house. I pick him up and I'm the EMT in the car trying to stay calm. And my friend is bleeding like out, like all over, like mask full of blood, you know, and it's COVID, it's peak COVID. And I'm just like, I can't even go and stay with you in this like emergency room. I just have to drop you off. And there was a curfew that night too. So I was tripping. I'm like, fuck, I can't even like pick him up because there were no Ubers and there was no like, it's not like the police could take him back to his house or my house or whatever. So I was like, oh my God, this is just me. Like my roommate was not home at the time. I remember like it was very dangerous. Like there's police all over, helicopters all over. And I just dropped off William and I was like, you text me when you're done and then I will pick you up. And I just remember like going home, boarding up, like literally like closing my blinds, like putting my furniture like on my like doors and stuff and just being by myself, like crying, like hysterically, you know, like calling my mom who lives in Texas, like just being really fearful. And then just waiting for Will to get stitched up, I guess. And then he texts me, he's like, all right, I'm ready. And I pick him up and I'm like, fuck, you might have COVID. You're in the hospital, tripping. Right. He's tripping. But like, you know, I was just happy that I could help him. I don't know, like, you know, what would have happened if I wasn't there. So it was very like traumatic, I think, like just because no one, like you call for help, like your you know, your tax money goes to like the police and like EMTs, like the paramedics, you know, all this stuff, and they could not help. They were not available.
Where are we going from here? Because I feel like there's a lot of anger and frustration, and we see that there needs to be change, but how do you think as a generation we will enact that change? Because there has been generations before us that have done this. Rodney King was years ago, and it's still the same thing happening. How do you think we as a generation can effectively do something different and actually enact change, and where could we possibly be going?
This Gen Z, I keep saying Gen Z just because I feel like the kids that I work with and stuff, and like my little sister, I'm just like, wow, I'm like, y'all are very different than even just like me, like being 25. They have a voice, they want to use their voice. They're very like, even just with like gender and sexuality, they're very much like open with stuff like that. Like I remember not wanting to talk about my own sexuality and how that really tore me up. So I think that just like their generation, and I think the generations below that, are just going to keep with that progressive mindset. I think that we can only just go up from here. I'm a very optimistic person too. If I was talking to someone else, like I have other friends who are very pessimistic. So for me, I'm optimistic, and I just hope that we can continue to, do more research on whatever issues that we have and talk to people firsthand if we get the opportunities to, because I think that's really important too. Like speaking to someone who actually lived through certain things and just listening, not like just stop talking for a second and just listen to what they're saying. Having empathy is the first step into like really understanding someone else's experience.